Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh, and in the virtual studio for this conversation is Mr. Eddy Oneil. Eddy is the founder of Poseidon Construction and Services in Daytona Beach, Florida. Now, as I have been introduced to multiple people who have guested on this show, Mr. Steve Rosenberg was kind enough to introduce me to Eddy as well. I'm going to tell you, this is what I like about Eddy. We dive into what the relationship of a general contractor and subcontractor should actually look like. I am fully on board with his principles and values of how to work together with other companies. So we push the envelope a little bit. I ask some uncomfortable questions, at least what some would find to be uncomfortable questions. So please enjoy my conversation with Eddy Oneil from Poseidon Construction and Services. When did you initially get into the trades?
So the trades, I pretty much from the time I could work was in the trades. I mean, I did landscaping, carpentry. I did a ton of HVAC work. Got into like metal duct work and shit for the theme parks, which was really cool. Just being, I like to see how things work. So like getting to go to the theme parks when they're closed and all the maintenance guys are out, and they're like, "Hey, come check this out." Like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, that would be kind of behind the scenes, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit you got to deal with, because and it's wonky hours. And that was the biggest. We were doing huge projects for Universal, Disney, you name it, and but it all has to be done overnight. And once you disconnect one of their ACs from one of their restaurants, let's say it's a 100-ton unit, it has to be operational by 7:30 in the morning. Like, they don't care. Your ductwork doesn't fit, you better figure it the fuck out, because 8 o'clock, they're turning that damn thing on whether you want to or not. So
yeah. So have you always been in Florida?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I had a buddy that I did HVAC with. He was actually my manager, and he was like, "Hey, like, why don't you come out?" He's like, "I started a handyman business, like, I think you could really like help us out." I was like, "Yeah, cool, like, we'll check that out." And then it just skyrocketed from there. I mean, we've since parted ways. I started my own company 7 years ago, or I don't know, 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, coming up on 8 years. Wow.
You don't look a day over 100.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a big job. Like, I finally pulled my head out of my ass once I came to that determination. And we were doing a big project for Universal, renovating one of their hotels. Like, the whole conference center and everything was ripped down to studs, reconfigured. And the GC talked to me, and he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "You're doing a really good job." Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, "Hey, like, just curious, like, I know what you're paying us, but like, what are you making on the job?" And he was like, "Well, I make 20% on everything that touches the job." He's like, and I was like, I want to be that guy.
Nice.
He gets he gets a piece of the pie from everyone, not just one single trade. And not that you can't be successful in a single trade, because you definitely can, but I mean, the GC stuff is great. I get bids from subs and throw a percentage on top of it, and we typically now run like 30 to 35% margins, which is great, because it's such a niche market that like, you have to have so much insurance to break into the multifamily game.
Gotcha.
Like, we spend over $100,000 a year in insurance. So, I mean, obviously that adds some to our overhead and whatnot, but
just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're, I mean, we're only bidding against big companies for the most part. And, I don't know, it's been good.
How have you through the process of the 8 years that you had your business upcoming on 8 years, what's your process for selecting and working with subcontractors?
I think my biggest criteria is that they answer the phone, and if they tell me they're going to be there on Monday, they better be there on Monday because otherwise I'm finding somebody else.
Mm,
Because I mean, time is money, and some of the projects we're on a real tight, and that screws every trade after them if they don't get their shit done. So um, I'm huge on like if I have to call and leave a voicemail and you don't call me back for 2 days, like I just completely write you off. Just
yeah,
like if you can't, everyone in day and age has a phone by them at some point in time in the day, and it takes 6 seconds to send a text message of like, "Hey, I'm busy. I'll call you back," or just whatever. Just
yeah,
communication is is big. So I
yeah,
think that's my biggest thing. I'm not. Uh, I don't try to be the cheapest contractor. I don't try to be the most expensive. I
mhm,
like to sit right in the middle, and I treat my subs the same way. Like some jobs we have bigger margins on them. I'm like, hey, toss a little on there, and everybody's eating. Um, but then there's times that my margins are smaller than I want, and I'm like, hey, turning the screws to them.
mhm,
So I think with your subs, it's a very like two-way street. It has to be a two-way street. And I'm a huge believer, like all of my guys, that if you take care of your guys will take care of your company. Like
mhm.
so, um, yeah.
In your business, Poseidon Construction, how many employees does your business have?
I think we're at 22.
Okay. Now, are those superintendent roles or PMs or
That's everyone. So that's
okay,
PMs, my operations manager. We have some foremen or slash superintendents,
mhm.
and then a bunch of skilled labor and day labor. So
So you do offer some skilled labor.
yeah,
You have
absolutely.
that also. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. When uh, I'll rephrase the question with a different word. How did you figure out that developing a good relationship with your subcontractor was one of the keys to winning in that game?
I think what it really stemmed from was like I was a subcontractor for a long time, and I worked for some people that were absolutely terrible to work for, and I was like, I don't know how this guy's in fucking business. Um, so once I made that choice to be a GC, like I never wanted to treat like my employees or my subs how
Mhm.
I was treated. So you know, I just I think networking is huge, and like trades talk. You know, like you piss a drywaller off, and he goes and tells 10 of his friends. Like no one is gonna give you a decent price because you messed with one of theirs.
Right.
Um, and I think one of the biggest things that we have like an expectation meeting of like, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what I'm expecting. Tell me what you're expecting from us. We go over like our pay terms and when to have a pay app in and all that stuff. Um, and
I Eddie, I am laughing because so far you're like the picture perfect GC. I mean, seriously, like these are things that I try to get subcontractors to initiate with the GCs that they work for. I'm like, you need to have expectations meetings. You need to know what
yeah,
net terms of payment are. You need to know what the schedule is. What's the 3-week look ahead?
yeah.
You've got to set all of these parameters, these
If you
operating
if
parameters.
if you don't, shit goes sideways or whatever, and then
Yeah,
you're pissed, they're pissed, like everyone's pissed, and it could have just been a simple conversation.
yeah,
And I mean, I don't understand why people don't ask how to get paid, because that's my first question is like, hey, like when we're doing work for somebody, I'm like, what are you, net 30, net 7? Like
yep.
when is my cutoff to get you a bill to, get a check the next week or whatever, you know? And I just think like a lot of companies try to like beat around, like I think a lot of people are afraid to ask for the money.
Yep, I agree with
And they
that.
don't want to have that like financial conversation with anyone, and I think that ends up hurting them, like, honestly, because I mean, if you got if you're a small subcontractor and you've got payroll and material and shit, and you miss your pay app date, and now you don't get paid for another 15, 30 days.
Yeah.
I mean, you could dig yourself a pretty good hole.
You can, and a lot of subcontractors are small business owners, right? And they can't finance a job for 90 days.
Right, right.
And but yet I think you're 100% correct. They don't ask the money question up front. And if I've got a 120-day net term, we're going to negotiate a 50% deposit for sure.
Oh, 100%. So we don't do anything over net 30. Just because even net 30 is never net 30 for our
Right.
clients.
Right.
And
Net 30 is for dive into that a little bit for people to understand, like, what is it's net 30 is not net 30. I understand the process, but what does that mean?
so net 30 is like if I come and do a job today, I don't get paid for 30 days, like from the day my
Mhm.
invoice goes in.
There it is, the invoice.
Yeah. So, and then even though it's 30 days, like sometimes it takes a week for them to input the invoice into whatever system they're using. Everyone uses a computer system now. Um, and then especially like high ticket invoices have to have multiple signatures on them, and that takes time. So like,
Yeah.
for example, this morning I had a conference call, and they were like, "Hey, when are you going to start on this project?" And I was like, "Hey, we still haven't gotten our deposit, so we're not doing anything." They
Yep.
were like, "Oh, you didn't?" And I'm like, "Come on, when you send a deposit and when you don't." Like, and it's not a small deposit. You're talking, I think 40 or 50 grand.
Yeah.
So I mean, you definitely you notice when 40 or 50 grand is coming in and out of your account.
If not, you have way bigger problems to
Yeah,
deal with.
yeah. I mean, unless you're making 100 mil a year, then you
Yeah.
probably could care less about 40 or 50 grand. But
Yeah. Well, I want to pitch this question at you because you and I, we align on just kind of our beliefs of operations and treating other people. Why is it that some of these general contractors, they do drag this out? They leverage their subcontractors as banks, and they make them really finance the
yeah,
job as long as they can.
uh, I I think it comes down to like a shitty contract negotiation. Like I'm very specific on my pay schedule, my draws. Like for instance, right now we're doing a 9 unit condo
Mhm.
building down in Sanibel, and we went through, made a schedule. We're like, hey, how long do we think this is going to take? Blah blah blah. We build in some little extra room there, but then we make sure that like, hey, our deposit covers like our long lead time items, and then
Mhm.
like once we finish the plumbing and the insulation, we get another draw. So I'm not waiting, and I think I know like a lot of these big GCs, they don't want to piss off their client because they're doing like a big project or whatever, but like if you're not paying, we'll just cut you off. Like,
Mhm.
like and like I said, like when I was a sub, I had people that wouldn't pay on time, or you got to hound them and go sit in their office. I sat in a guy's office for 8 hours, and they were like, "Oh no, he's not here. He's not here." And then he was there. And I was like, "Hey," I'm like,
Yeah.
"You owe me a check like 90 days ago. Like, I'm not leaving until you figure it out." It's like, "Oh, I didn't know." Okay.
Yeah, you didn't know. Yeah, what I think is it's part of the old way of doing business, right? The general contractors leverage the subcontractors.
Yeah.
They beat their price down and then mark it up, and that's where all of theirs comes from. And then they allow the subcontractors to finance the job, and and they string that payment out. That's becoming unacceptable
Yeah.
more and more every day.
I mean, people choose who they wanna work with. Like,
That's right.
we edited our clients or audited them, and, we got rid of our, like, C and D clients just because they're more headache. We're
Mhm.
constantly chasing money, like, it all takes time. That's what, like, a lot of people don't understand is, like, my VA, is
Mhm.
calling. Like we're just the squeaky wheel and hoping to get some grease, you know?
Right.
Uh, but I'd just rather do the job and get paid on our payment terms that we negotiated
Yeah.
and move on. And I'm not going to make my subs wait because I'm trying to put more money in my pocket or, I
Yeah.
spend it somewhere else or whatever. I mean, I remember what it was like when, I had one other guy working with me and
Mhm.
him. And, I mean, that was, if somebody would have stiffed us for 90 days, I mean, it would have put me out of business.
And that's what I think needs to be understood. It's like when you're leveraging your subcontractors, you're potentially putting them out of business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's happened to us a couple of times.
Mhm.
I mean, we had a project, I don't know, probably 4 years ago now that they owed like $120,000 on. We finished the project. And they were like, "Oh, your progress payments are coming," and then they were like, "Oh, hey, like our mortgage went up," and I was like, "Okay." I'm like, "That's not my problem."
No.
We got a signed contract, so we had to do the whole lien thing and battle it out, and we ended up getting paid. But I mean, it uh, definitely put a damper on things that we could do.
Yeah.
Um, and
I want you to know, Eddie, how much I not only appreciate but respect the approach that you're taking with your subcontractors because your subcontractors are your team. I
yeah,
mean, you've
absolutely,
got your in-house team and you've got your external team, and they
yeah,
are your team. And the only way that you're going to best serve your client is by best serving your team.
yeah,
And
absolutely, and
so I appreciate and I have a tremendous amount of respect for your approach in this.
yeah, I mean, and then like when we hire like a sub that's like new, or I can tell he's new by
Mhm.
the shit that's going on. I'm like, hey, like I think you were a little high here, but I think you were super low over here. Like maybe do that, and then like we have a tile guy that we just hired, young kid. He's got like 7 guys that work for him. Um, and he was like, yeah, he's like the job's like 50 grand, and he's like, I need a $5,000 deposit. I'm like, buddy, that's not gonna cover your material by
You need a $25,000 deposit.
yeah, I was like, "Dude," I'm like, "You're gonna need 15, 20 grand,
Mhm.
like, to get this thing going." He's like, "You think?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'm
I've done this once or
positive.
twice." So,
Yeah.
um,
How do
mm,
you negotiate yeah, I'll just stay with the term negotiate. How do you negotiate with your subcontractors on deposit percentages or deposit amounts?
so I do 1 or 2 things. I either, like, give them a mobilization deposit, and then I'll buy all the material. I like getting all the Amex points and all that shit, you know?
Mhm.
Um And then if they're buying material and it completely hands off from me, I don't mind giving them a bigger deposit because I know they have to account for, the labor until their next pay app and their material and shit like
Mhm.
that. So I mean, um, like the tile guy, he's doing 9,000 or 7,000 square foot of flooring, 10 showers, bathrooms, backsplash, and it's like, buddy, 5 grand's not gonna get you there. You're gonna come to me as soon as you get there and be like, "Hey,
Can I make a draw?
yeah, can I get
Yeah,
a draw?" Like,
yeah,
"No, buddy. If I don't get mine, you ain't getting yours."
yeah, right. And and that's part of it too. Do you recommend that subcontractors do work if they can't get a deposit?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think if somebody's not willing, every relationship, even business relationships, is a two-way street, you know?
Mhm. I agree.
And if that person doesn't trust you enough to give you a deposit, maybe not 50%, but something to
It
get you
it's
going and
it's
show that,
negotiable. It's
"Hey, like,
negotiable.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna get paid when I do X, Y, and Z."
yeah.
Like, if you're not willing to put some skin in the game, I'm not willing to come and work for you because it's just like I think that just sets the expectation of, you're gonna dick me every pay app
Yeah.
or what you're gonna be, "Oh, you were a day late," or "You're this," or "You're that," I've heard every excuse in the book of
Mhm.
why we didn't get paid on the day
Yeah.
we're supposed to get paid, so
The the real reason I asked that question, Eddie, is there's a lot of subcontractors that don't know that they can ask for a deposit,
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
and they just go into the contract with the assumption that they do have to finance the whole thing from day one, and then wait to the very end, which, as you know, some projects take months and months to do
yeah, absolutely.
to get paid.
Yeah, and, like, I don't agree with that. I don't
Mhm,
agree, and if somebody's like, "Hey, you're gonna finance our job for 30, 60 days," whatever, I'm putting a higher percentage on it.
mhm.
There's always a money cost. Like, you're not getting my money for free. Like, you can't go to the bank and get money for free. So, like,
That's
neither
it's
can
a
I, so
man, but that's the mistake, right? Subcontractors are a 0% interest bank
yeah, absolutely, but
for
if you let them do that to you, they're just gonna keep doing it to you,
that's right.
because at the end of the day, you're gonna be the last person to get paid
Yeah,
if you're financing
yeah,
the whole thing, and I mean, that,
yeah.
like you
What
said, that'll put you out of business in
it
no
it
time.
it will. What, what made you start Poseidon Construction?
Um, I knew I wanted to be a GC,
Okay.
talking to the guy at Universal.
Right.
Um, I had a partner for a while, we did, like, the handyman thing, ended up becoming GCs. Um, we split ways, we had a difference of opinions, and, I just started my own, and I saw, like, for me, I was looking for, like, a recession-proof, something, building. So, got into the multifamily, and it doesn't matter because people are paying their rent before they're gonna
Mhm.
pay other things, and it doesn't matter what the economy, I mean, obviously, when the economy's riding high, they're spending more money on capital improvements and things like that, but there's always service work. I don't care if there's a recession, your pipes are still gonna break if they're 40 years old, like, there's always gonna be service work. You may not
Mhm.
knock it out of the park, with one big project, but I mean, with enough service work, you keep your
Mm.
guys busy, keep your bills paid,
Yeah.
and, you know,
But
keep
why did you choose the route of being a business owner as opposed to continuing to work for other people?
I hated
I love when a sentence starts like this.
I hated how, sometimes there's so much red tape and, like, so much, like, bureaucracy within a company just to get something stupid done. I'm like, "Why does this have to be a seven-step process for me to get 3 highlighters and a marker?" Like,
Mhm.
I don't think you should, I think there's a way to do things, and, like, I don't think you should complicate simple tasks. I mean, if it's a more complex task, absolutely have a bunch of steps to it or whatever, but,
Right.
um, and honestly, I hated you're always capped, I mean, if you're a plumber, you're only gonna make so much money as a plumber. So
Mhm.
you start, scaling, and,
Yeah.
that was always in my mind, like, I'm an employee, uh, this sucks, and I wanted better, um, so that's what I did. I was like, "And if I fail, it's my own fault, it's
Mhm.
nobody else's, and can't blame anybody," and
Yeah.
that's it.
What now that you've got the business and you're 8 years in, when did you discover that you needed to learn more about business than the trade itself?
Uh, I learned that pretty early.
Okay, good.
Uh, the trade knowledge, is there, and YouTube University is a hell of a thing,
Right.
uh, but the business side, like, I think the 2nd year in business, I got hit with, like, a $35,000 tax bill, and I was like, "Fuck," and I didn't have 35 grand, so I had to set up a payment plan and, like, do
Mhm.
all this crazy shit, and, I was like, "Fuck, like, how do we make that not happen next year?" Or, like, or we need to be putting money away to pay the taxes at the end of the year,
Yeah.
So, so we've hired an accountant for, I don't know, the last 5 or 6 years, and they take care of, they yell at me quite a bit, but I try to write off everything. Like, "No, no, no, that's a write-off, that's a write-off." They're like, "No,
Yeah.
that's not how that
No, it's
works." It's
not.
like, "Alright." I,
Yeah.
I bought, it was funny, I think 2 years ago, I bought, like, some of our top clients, like, Louis Vuitton purses,
Okay.
and I tried to write that off, and they were like, "Absolutely not." I'm like, "They're not for me." Like, I'm not
Yeah.
hanging out with a purse. And, they were like, "Yeah, that doesn't count." It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that sucks."
Yeah. The IRS may qualify that as in excess.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. But if somebody's doing a couple $1,000,000 a year, I mean,
Yeah.
I get it, everybody wants to eat, but on that note, like, I hate when people give kickbacks. I think it's
Mhm.
such a shitty, like, business model, and it's just slimy. Like, I
Yep.
I don't like it. We've dealt with it with, we'll give a bid, and then they'll give our scope, and then they'll be like, "Oh, well, this guy's $20,000 cheaper." And I'm like, "Okay, he's $20,000 cheaper, cool. My price is still my price." And
Right.
I'm, you know, um, I'm like, "Hey, like, don't waste my time." Like, if you're gonna use X, Y, and Z company because they're giving you a 5% rebate or a 10% rebate or whatever, I was like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I just try to give you, like, a good price, quality work,
Mhm.
and, I'm not trying to get rich on one project, you know?
Right.
It'd
Right.
be great if it worked that way. I mean, that would be, uh,
Yeah.
that would be the tits, but that's
No.
not how it works.
No, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it's, like 5 years ago, if you like, we're in a 5,000 square foot shop now. We've got a studio. Like, if you would've told me 5 years ago that any of this, I would've been like, "You're out of your mind." Like, um, but I mean,
Well, where did that mind shift happen for you to because where you are is a result, right? It's a result of
yeah,
relationships
absolutely.
and decisions. When did that mind shift happen for you when you realized that you could grow and scale?
I think probably in the last 2 years or so. Like, I mean, we've steadily grown, but the last 2 years, we've really, like, focused in on, like, how
Mhm.
do I scale this thing? Like, I wanna have 100 techs, in 3 years. So, um, but we're doing the groundwork stuff to make that happen.
Mhm.
And since we've been working with Steve,
Mhm.
I don't go out and swing a hammer anymore because I'm pissed off at the guys.
Yeah.
Uh,
Shout out to Steve Rosenberg.
yeah, yeah.
What a
No,
what a fascinating human being, so
his his one saying that has stuck with me is not how but who, and like, I've really embraced that, and it's been great. I mean, I'm home more with my kid, and uh, able to travel and do things, and I don't have to worry
mhm.
about the show falling apart while I'm gone. Um,
Let I wanna dive down this a little bit because, first, I'm gonna explain the common misconception of the autonomy of owning a business, and what I really mean by that is you just said, "I get to spend more time with my kids, I get to travel a little bit more." I think when small-minded people hear that, they think, "Oh, yeah, I'm just doing a job and the fucking boss isn't here anymore, and all we're doing is making him richer, and he's just traveling and doing all this kind of bullshit." And then us as small business owners, especially in the blue collar, because we at some point was probably in that position saying those things,
yeah,
we
absolutely.
we carry that into our business and we go, "Well, I've gotta be on the tools, I've gotta be out in the trenches, and I've gotta be doing this stuff." 2 things. One is, and you kinda touched on it with Steve, how did you change that narrative for yourself, and how does that really affect your team?
So I will be the first to admit I'm anal retentive about how I want things done.
Oh,
Uh,
you're a business owner that is a control freak? What? Isn't there a club for people like you?
I think so. I think so. Uh, so I think the hardest thing for me was, like, giving responsibility, like, major responsibility to someone else. And then, I used to think like, man, it'd be awesome to have an operations manager, but I can't afford a 6-figure salary, So, but I think I'm a big believer in, like, if what you put out in the world, you're gonna get back. Like when you go look at let's say you go look at a G wagon, you
Hmm.
start noticing G wagons everywhere because you're
Yes.
looking,
Yeah.
your mind is
It's
actively looking for that.
the reticular activating system.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely, and I'm a huge believer in that. So, I mean, we post our goals on the wall. We post,
Hmm.
and like I take each one of my guys and we do like a vision board, and I'm like, hey, a vision board's awesome, but what's your plan to
What's
actually
the
fucking get
plan?
there? Like, you can stare at a picture of Tahiti for a year, and you're still not going to make it there if you're not saving some money,
Yep.
for your time off and whatnot. So, I think relinquishing control was the biggest like hurdle for me because I was like, oh, I can do it all, but then you can't because
Hmm.
like I suck at like I'm great at sales, terrible at paperwork and shit like that. Like it's not for me. But
Right.
so it's like my operations manager. He's awesome. We use the disc profiles.
Yep.
He's a CI or an IC. I forget which way he went. Um, so he's very like I can be like, hey, can you whip me up a spreadsheet? And he's like, and it's done. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that would have taken me 3 days, and I probably would have thrown this computer across the room.
Three days and a bottle of whiskey. I might have got that done.
I'm like, how do you do that? I love spreadsheets. I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
I like
Psycho.
spreadsheets. I just have no idea how to make them.
Right. Oh, I have no clue. No clue.
He's got all the. Uh, he's got. I think that was another hard part. Was like I know what things cost and how much I pay my guys and our
Mhm.
overhead and things. So like, I was the one constantly bidding the jobs. But then I'm like, well, I can't bid every job. I mean, during summertime, we got 10, 15 jobs a day going on that, you can't be everywhere at
Mhm.
one time. And the operations guy was like, how do you come up with bid numbers? I'm like, oh, well, I took him through the process on a whiteboard actually. And he was like, cool, I'm going to make a spreadsheet. So now we have like a spreadsheet and he's got all kinds of shit that we can plug in and gives us our number. We put our margins on it and,
Yeah.
we get pretty close. So, um, I think the hurdle for me was like, I expect people to know what was in my head. Like you're supposed to be a mind reader, And I'm like,
Mhm.
how do you not know this? Like,
I don't have my mind reading glasses on
yeah,
today.
sorry, I didn't bring my mind reading glasses.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean that was a big thing. Like putting, like we were talking about earlier, putting systems and and processes, and that was a big, um, like a big thing for
Yeah.
us because we just really like flew by the seat of our pants. I mean, we knew we had X, Y, and Z to do. We get emergency calls in. We're getting them done, but I couldn't tell you what we're doing 4 days from now.
Yeah.
Um, so we've really added a lot of systems, and like we've gotten pretty good on our scheduling and everything else. Of I could tell you,
Mhm.
where we're going to be in 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's that's a big thing. Um, it's just because if you don't have systems in place, nobody else can
Mhm.
replicate it.
Yeah.
They don't know how I think, so if I don't tell them and I don't write it down, they have
Right.
no idea.
When you're keeper of the information, it doesn't allow anyone to make a decision.
No, absolutely, and
You can't delegate, you can't
no,
empower, you can't do nothing.
no, because they're constantly calling you, asking you what to
That's
do.
right. That's right. You're
I'm
the
like,
know-it-all, you're the easy
don't
button.
call me.
Yeah, so, and that kinda leads me back to my second question, like, now that you're in that role and you're continuing to be in that role, how have you seen how that's affected your team? As opposed to overcoming again the perspective that, "Oh, I'm just working for this son of a bitch and and he's never here." What's that relationship with your team like, and what is that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I treat my guys very, very well. I'm a big believer. I do have high expectations, and I know that. Um, so I also believe in paying top dollar for your labor because you can pick and choose who you want at that point.
Mhm.
Um, and we do a ton of stuff for our employees. Like we'll if there's a bunch of them on a job site, we'll bring the Blackstone out and cook them lunch, or just small things like that. And then we
Yeah.
have we have events just for our employees that we take them out and go do something cool with their family. Um, so there's a lot of stuff, and I think that's I'm able to do that now that I'm not trying to do 10 different jobs
Mhm.
at one time. I'm like, hey, like we could do better at treating our guys. Like, let's do it. Um, and I can delegate to somebody to, hey, go
Mhm.
get groceries and let's cook them lunch or whatever. Um, and that's probably like one of my favorite things. Like, I mean, we cook like hamburgers and hot dogs, but I mean, everybody hangs out by the grill,
Yep.
and just munches down on some hamburgers and shit, and we just kind of chop it up, and it's cool, because it makes
Yeah.
I think it makes them see you as a human. You're not just the guy writing the check.
Mhm.
You're a person, and like I said, I'm a huge believer
Yep.
in treat your guys right, and they'll treat you right.
Yeah. I think kind of one of my sayings, if you will, is if you expect more, you're expected to pay more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you will attract people that will meet your expectations. They'll meet your standard. They'll represent you. They'll represent the company. They'll create the best experience. But y-
Absolutely, because 'cause they're
it,
an
it
extension of you, you
that's
know?
100%.
I can go sell the job all day, but if the guy that comes into your office to check in and out is a complete asshole,
Yeah.
you're like, "Dude, fuck them, I'm not using them again," like
Yeah, that's right. Eddie, when you started the company, was it just you, or did you? I know you talked about a partner, but how many people were there from day one?
it was just me, and
Uh,
and, I actually started by just painting apartments,
okay.
because I had a paint sprayer, and I was like, "That's my foot in the door to," and then they're always like, "Well, do you do this and do you do that?" And that's how we grew. But I mean, there were times when I would call my mom, she's retired,
Mhm.
and I'd be like, "Can you come help me paint some fucking units? Like, I've got 8 to do today, and there's no way I'm gonna get it by myself,"
Right.
you know? And, she would come and help me, and then it was funny. I forget what hurricane it was, but came across the property, and we were first ones here. I literally had I had, like, 2 employees at the time, but I knew, like, if I could look like a bigger company, that would attract me some higher contracts. And, I literally asked every single friend of mine, I'm like, "Hey, I need you just to come up. I don't care if you literally stuff your face all day. I just need you to put a shirt on and come up with us." And, I think I ended up having, like, 12 or 15 people, and the client was just, like, over the top that we had so much manpower out there. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, you guys are gonna do this so quick." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Yeah, sure are. So,
What a brilliant tactic.
I mean, hey, it worked.
Yeah.
We got the contract, and you
How
know,
did you decide when you needed to hire someone and what that hire looked like? Because hiring, once you break that threshold of hiring, I think it does get easier. But crossing over, what was that like?
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue, like with my first hire, was I was too busy, and I knew like I couldn't keep up with the production that they were throwing at me by myself. But I was like, man, like it's gonna be really hard to find somebody that has high expectations and high standards as myself, because obviously when I was starting, I couldn't pay top dollar. I
Mhm.
wasn't getting top dollar. Um, so my first hire was a guy named Willie, and he was awesome. Like he stuck with me through some real shitty times, and he was there for the good times, and he ended up moving away. But that was my first hire, and then I was like, oh, okay, now I can do 2 jobs in a day, or I can,
Mhm.
and then it just kind of grew from there. We just hire. I mean, we're always hiring. I'm always looking for quality people. I don't care what you do. If you're good at what you do, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that again, crossing that threshold of having the experience of having an employee, and when I talk to a lot of small business owners, single owner operators, it's one of the big hangups is who does what is the right hire? Who should I hire first?
Yeah. I mean,
And
I can tell you, like, it frustrated the shit out of me because, like, even now, like, with my dialed in, like, job descriptions,
Mhm.
and I make everyone take a disc profile. I don't care if you apply, you're taking a disc profile. You got 24 hours. If you
Yep.
don't return it in 24 hours, I literally put all of your shit in the trash can. Because if you can't follow simple direction, I mean, it's
Yeah.
15 questions. I mean, it takes you 2 minutes.
Yep.
Um, so I mean, like, using the disc profiles. But to go back to what I was saying, we have a job up right now for a project manager, and I have people from, like, McDonald's that are applying to be a project manager. I'm like, how is that even remotely related? Like,
They just see manager and they think, "Oh, I was a manager here." Obviously,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
similar.
yeah. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Like, you need to move up the chain wherever you're
Yeah.
at. I want somebody that's, I me personally, I have an old guy that works for me. He's probably close to 60 now, but he is, like, the most knowledgeable. Funny enough, he was an owner's rep, and we were doing staircase replacements with steel and concrete steps. And he came out and was like, "Dude, you guys are doing a really good job, especially for what you're charging." I didn't know I was undercharging by quite a bit. Um, he called and was like, "Hey, I have a property down in Naples that just got hit with the hurricane. Like, I can't get anybody out here to do the fence." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Aluminum fence, nothing crazy." Um, they were paying a god awful amount of money, and I was like, "Yeah, do you need me there tomorrow?" Or, like, I mean, I think we were getting $68 a foot or something. It was something ridiculous, and they gave us an apartment. Like, I mean, it was nice. And then he called me one day and was like, "Hey, man," he's like, "I'm sick of being on the road 24/7." I was like, "Yeah, I get it." I was like, "It sucks." And he's like, "I just want to work one place. Like, I know I'm going to take a pay cut, but and he's been with me for 5 years now,
Awesome.
and he is a very analytical person, and he's got so much knowledge. Like, he teaches me shit all the time because it's just trade knowledge is
Mhm.
in his spare time. He loves to go and read, like, building code and, like, the national electrical code. Like, he's like, "Yeah, last night I read up on the NEC, and I think we need to change this and this." That's awesome, dude.
That's awesome.
Like,
I think you have a disorder, but that's awesome.
100%, 100%. I'm like, the last thing on my mind is, like, I need to go look at the electrical code when I get
Yeah.
home.
That's obviously what I'm gonna do for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be reading a contractor book, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
broader question, what would you say it's been your biggest lesson or learning experience in either business or leadership?
I think the biggest thing is probably accountability, holding people accountable. Like, set your standards, and if they don't meet it, find somebody else. And I think that was a big turning point for us. Was just, "Hey, this is what I expect to get done. This is how I want it done. I don't care if you have 48 other ways that you'd rather do it. This is how we do it here, and this is it." And not that I'm not open to, if something wonky happens and my
Mhm.
guys have ideas, I'm all
Mhm.
for ideas, but when it's like ripping out and replacing a sidewalk, like there's a quick way to do it, and it's very
Yeah.
simple and it's got an order of operations and you do it. There's no reason to deviate from that. It's a
Yeah.
tried and true um, thing. And like if it's don't broke, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. How do you hold people accountable or your team leaders? What does that conversation or process look like?
I mean, we have KPIs uh,
Okay.
that we measure. Like for instance, my operations manager, he's got out of all of our jobs, he's got an average to a 30% margin. So that's his problem. And
Mhm.
if we're below it, I'm like, hey, what are we doing to fix it? And obviously, if we're above it, we dole out some bonuses and whatnot. But I I think just communicating is the biggest thing. Like, what do you want and how do you want it done, and putting the systems in place to
Mhm.
show people, like, they can go to a binder and be like, okay, this is how we do this, or just something. Uh, like we came up with like checklists. So if they're going to do like service work and, like, let's say putting in an AC, I've
Mhm.
got probably 20 things on a checklist that they have to initial and sign that they did it. I have to get pictures or they don't get paid. So like,
I love
and
it.
and it's funny because, like, I'm very strict on my, like, pay app. Like, you gotta have it in on time because and it's not that it takes a bunch of time, it's just that's your money. Like, if you're not hungry for your money, I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
I'm trying to get every dollar I can every day. Um,
Yep.
and I think that just being, like, out in the open with everything.
Mhm.
Like, I used to like, something that was very hard for me was I never wanted to share, like, financials with someone. I was like, man, like, I don't want them to know how much I'm making because then they're gonna hate me. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
you got all those things going through your head, and finally I was just like, dude, I'm like, if they don't know where our numbers are, like, they don't know that we bid the job for 3 days and three guys. Like, they don't know that kind of shit. They're gonna take their sweet ass time and,
Mhm.
like, and then they take 5 days and we end up not making shit on the job. I'm not in the business to break even.
Right.
Uh, I'm trying to have some more toys and
Yeah.
things like that.
I agree, and I think, if you're not in the business to be profitable, you need to get out of business. So, what would you say to someone that is kinda has some hesitation about being successfully profitable? Be because part of the narrative, I think, is people is they feel like if they make too much money, they feel like they're stealing. What would you say to someone about building that relationship with profit and understanding it?
I think I I really think you're selling yourself short if you're not getting your margins. Like, if you're putting out a great product and you have great service, why are you not charging more? Like, and if they don't want to pay it, I promise you, someone out there will pay it. And I think the biggest thing, I mean, I had a different view on money. Like, we were poor when we grew up and all that, and I was like, man, I don't want to do this forever. I was like,
Mhm.
so, like, started reading and just putting myself in the right rooms with people that were where I wanted to go, and like, uh, I used to run at like 15-20% margins. I was like, fuck, that sucks. And then it's not terrible, but
Right.
who doesn't want to add more points to their margin? And then we met Tom Reber. I'm not
Mhm.
sure if you know him.
I'm friends with Tom.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
Tom's cool. Tom's
Yeah.
cool. And he's like, dude, he's like 50% margins. And I'm like, oh, that's a rough number to get up to. Like, I would love it for sure, but
Yeah.
finding clients that are willing to pay that much is
Yeah.
you've got to be at the absolute top of your game, given the best service, the best product,
Right.
everything from the front office to the job to the back office.
That's right.
It's got to be a seamless experience, and it's got to be uh, a great like hand holding. Like, and that's like something I learned when we went down to Sanibel was that the people that have 10-20 million dollar mansions, they want their hand held. Like, they're not
Mhm.
like my normal client that's like, I don't care, just get it done, and we need it done by X, Y, and Z. They wanted to be involved in every single step of the process. Like every day, they're like, "Oh, what are we doing?" I'm like, "We're still cleaning out muck from your first story. Like that's where we're at today, you know."
Yep.
And I sat and thought, and I was like, "Man, how is our customer experience? Like
There
we're
it
more
is.
geared to multifamily where they don't really care about things like that." But I was like, if we're gonna go and tackle these huge houses, they want updates daily.
Yep.
Like, hey, this is what we did. So we started like taking pictures, sending like, hey, even if it was something stupid, like we got another 40-yard dumpster full of muck out of your house. Like
Mhm.
we're still going at it, because they're not small houses, so it's not like something you're gonna bang out in a day. Um, and it's just I really took a look at our customer experience and was like, wow, it sucks. Like I wouldn't hire us. Like, you know, uh, and I'm like,
What a great discovery, though.
yeah, like, and it hurts. It hurts.
Yes.
You're like, damn, that sucks. Like I suck at this, and so that's why we started communicating a lot better.
Mhm.
That was one of my biggest like weaknesses was communication, and once we started communicating more, like people don't care that you're late. They just want to know what the fuck's going on. And
Agreed.
it's like, hey, X, Y, and Z happen. It's gonna take another day or two. Yeah, they're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, like no worries.
I
Whereas
know.
if you don't say anything and you're like, why the fuck aren't you done today? And you're
Yeah.
like,
It's exactly how that works. They create their own assumptions based
yeah,
on
yeah,
their
yeah.
own expectations that was never communicated. So,
I'd rather
I
communicate to them information so they don't make the assumptions, because most people that make assumptions aren't making good assumptions.
no, it always errs on the negative.
Yeah,
The
absolutely. Absolutely.
that's just I think that's human nature, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's always gonna, yeah, err to the negative. But, creating that customer experience and I appreciate the fact that you were talking about, like, high value clients because blue collar people first of all, most blue collar, they don't even like people to begin with, right? So, over the thought of communicating with someone every day in this hand-holding process, they're just like, "Ah, not worth it." Like, "Not worth it? Really? Not worth 50% gross profit margin?"
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
really not? And my experience is the same. They're a high value client, which means they're a high performer, which means they require higher everything, higher
Yeah,
involvement,
absolutely.
higher communication, higher understanding, higher everything. They don't care about the cost. They care about the
No.
experience and the result and that their expectation is being met. And
Yeah,
if you're not navigating them through that process systematically and involving them where they feel valued, they're not going to call you back.
yeah.
And
They
that's
wanna
even if
feel
they let you
included.
finish the job. They do.
Yeah, they just wanna feel included. Didn't matter. I was like, "Hey," I had clients that were like, "Can you come with me to pick out tile?" And I'm like, "Sure." I'm like, "But what I like and what you like are probably 2 totally different things," you know? And, but whatever. Go and hold hands and
Yeah.
make them feel warm and fuzzy, take them to
It
lunch,
it
and
does, and if you've got a $20 million mansion, you want the white glove service,
yeah, absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
they're willing to pay for it. Again, the price doesn't matter.
Yeah, and the first person we got in with in Sanibel, she knew everyone on the island. Like, I mean, she's like, "It's such a niche community." Obviously in the summertime, we grow to, like, I forget how many people, like 60,000 people, but on a normal day, there's like 12,
Wow.
with all the vacation rentals and whatnot.
Mhm.
And she was great because she was like, "Hey, listen, that guy fucks every contractor. This guy's a cheap Jew. Like, fuck him." Like, but hey, I have a neighbor across the canal that he lives in, I forget where he lives, like Oklahoma or some shit. And like, can you go look at his house? I'm like, absolutely. He was like, all right, cool. We didn't bat an eye at price or
Yeah.
anything. He was like, cool. He's like, look, I really don't care how much we spend. I just need to get my house back together because that's where my family comes to like hang out. So,
Mhm.
uh, so I think once you're dealing with high value clients like that, they have a different perspective
They
than
do.
than than your middle of the road because they maybe they don't have a bunch of time. I mean, if you're a high performer, you're spending your time doing you know things to make you more money,
That's right.
and your family time is important too.
Mhm.
And if that's the one place that you take your kids for spring break, like
Yep.
his whole family came down for spring break. House wasn't done, but I was like, I'll have it to where you guys can come down and stay. Like it's not going to be 100% by any means, so don't expect like. But we made
Right.
sure like the walls were painted, the bathrooms were done, like we put his furniture
Yeah.
together for him. He's like, "Oh, you didn't have to do that." I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah." I'm like,
Yeah, you
first off, I want it out of the fucking way of everything else
right.
because shit piled up drives me nuts.
Yep.
And two, I'm like, dude, I'm like, now you can come down and go pick out linens with your wife or whatever. You're not
Yep.
sitting here with an IKEA freaking Allen key trying to bang together some furniture.
Yeah.
So
No, it is about the experience, and when you take that same concept of the high value client and you apply it to your middle of the road, like, everyday client, and you treat them and make them feel high valued, the result's the same.
yeah,
They're again, that experience, and they're happy to pay, 'cause something I learned too is most people don't wanna feel cheap.
yeah,
They
absolutely.
they don't wanna feel cheap, so contractors go in with the expectation that these people are looking for the cheapest price. They don't wanna feel cheap, they wanna feel valued, and they wanna know and trust that you're gonna solve their problem and create this thing for them,
Yeah,
and meet their expectations. That's what they really want. So, having that mindset of what's the best way to serve our client? How can we create this experience? Again, they wanna feel valued. People do not want to feel cheap. And
yeah.
and those people that do are not your client.
No, they're not people we want to do business with anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing, like in sales, was I mean, I don't care what anybody says. You're judging people on how they dress, what kind of car they pull up in.
Mhm.
Some guy will come in a fucking $500 beater and buy $100,000 truck. Like, it doesn't.
Yep.
And that was one thing that like I learned was like, don't be afraid to ask for the money because they can either afford it or they can't. You know,
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
and um, like we have a qualifying process. Like if you
Mhm.
call, my guys have a script of a bunch of questions to ask you, and I don't ever turn anybody away. But I'm like, hey, we don't do that, or we're not in this ballpark. Like, call X, Y, and Z. I have a guy.
Yeah.
So I try to uh, always have something for them, even if they're not coming with
You're
us.
still serving the client.
Right, but because it makes them feel warm and fuzzy, and then they tell their friends like, "Hey, this guy didn't even make a dollar off of me, and he set me up with so and so." And
Yep.
um, so I think that's a big thing. And even when clients call and they're like shit that we don't do, I'll find somebody to do it. I'm like, "Hey, found a company, they'll come out and do it. It's X, Y, and Z."
Yeah.
And and they like that because they know I'm not going to hire some asshole to come out and work on their property.
That's right.
And they trust that I'm gonna vet that person. They know, like, I don't shy away from telling them I run 30% margins.
Mhm.
And some people like it, some people don't. I mean, obviously people paying don't like it, but I mean, I'm like, hey, I'm like, you could go with the guy running at 8% margins. I'm like, you're gonna have 400 change orders. and you're gonna get a shitty ass job because that guy
Yep.
he's trying to be in and out so fast because there's just not enough money in the job.
That's right. And they end up piecemealing the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
And it's terrible.
we had the hurricane that hit Sanibel hit up here in Daytona. Um, Obviously the remnants of it,
Mhm.
not the Category 5, but we had a property, gave them a bid. They had a 25,000-pound tree fall on the roof, obviously caused a ton of water damage because
Mhm.
it's raining, and, we put a bid in, and I think we were like 140, and the other contractor was 120, so they went with that guy. It has been over a year and a half, and those units still aren't ready to rent.
Oh my god. They lost more than
I
$20,000 in
I
revenue.
called their asset manager, and I was like, "Hey," they had an apartment burned down, and we were bidding against the same contractor, and I was like, "Hey, I just wanna point out, you guys have lost over $60,000 in rental revenue." I was like, "And my bid wasn't $60,000 more,"
Yep.
and, we just did a burn unit, burnt down to the ground, um, 31 days, and it's back on the market for rent.
Damn.
And he's like, "Dude, I can't believe how fast you did that." I'm like, "Yeah, if you're willing to pay, I can throw more people in here." Like,
That's right. We get it
like,
done.
you get what you pay for, and, like, if you're trying to turn it I mean, in multifamily, if you're not renting apartments, you're not making any money. You
That's
don't
right.
want them vacant, so, uh, I mean, I think he was like, "Damn," he's like, "We shoulda just hired you for the other building," like, "Yeah, well."
Yeah. I wasn't gonna say that, but I'm
I'm like,
glad you did.
"Well, I'm glad it came out of your mouth and not
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
mine."
Oh, man. Well, Eddie, I've gotta thank Steve, for this introduction. Um,
Absolutely.
but, uh, I'm indebted to you for taking the time to spend with me, share your story. I know I'm gonna get some messages, especially about this whole GC subcontractor relationship thing, which, I like being a little I like to stir the pot a little bit,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think it's awesome. So,
But you get
with
people thinking, you know, like,
ultimately,
"Oh,
that's the goal.
maybe I should be like, if he can do it, I can do it."
Yeah, absolutely. So, that being said, anything to add that we haven't covered that you wanna share?
I don't think I got anything.
Okay.
I think we got some juicy nuggets in there.
Yeah, we do. I checked out your Instagram, but share with people, how can they find you?
We're on Instagram and Facebook, Poseidon Construction and Services. Uh, we've got some really funny content, some educational
Mhm.
content, uh, and, all the we share our fuck ups with you because
I
we're not.
loved the paint on the sidewalk.
Yeah,
I
and,
loved
like,
that reel.
you wanna know what's funny about that is we ended up firing that guy,
Okay.
and it wasn't because of what he did, it's he took the video as, like, we were attacking him, and I was like, "Whoa, hold on," I'm like, "We're not attacking you, I didn't even say your name or, like,
Right, right.
anything along those lines." I was like, "I'm just showing that you did something stupid, and now we've gotta go back and fix it?" And he just was, like, on a rampage.
His ego couldn't take it?
No, and I was like, "Buddy, how stupid to spray paint a fucking grate on concrete when there's grass 6 inches to the right?" Like,
Yeah,
grass grows, concrete doesn't? Like, and he got, like, super butthurt, and we ended up firing him for it because
yeah,
it was just stupid shit? And it's like, dude, just own up to your mistakes, you
yeah,
know? None of us are perfect, and I don't try to be a perfect, like, Instagram person
mhm,
like, we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect.
yeah. I
So
liked that video because of that reason. It was like, "Hey, we made a mistake. This is what happened, and by the way, we pressure washed
yeah,
all of the sidewalks.
yeah.
We didn't just do this one area, we've had
Yeah,
everything
because it'll
cleaned."
look like dog shit with
It will.
fresh one section done, and then the rest of it's green,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. So I liked that video. I appreciated that because it's real. You're
Yeah,
not trying to sugarcoat anything, you're not making stuff up, like, it's real.
yeah, absolutely. And,
So, unfortunately for him, like I said, his ego couldn't take it, but
no, I mean, if you fuck up, own it and fix it. You know?
Absolutely.
Like I tell my guys, I'm like, dude, you can call me and tell me you fucked up, but just have a plan of how you're gonna fix it.
Yeah.
I don't care that we fucked up. Like, obviously, I'd rather not fuck up, but
Yeah.
when it happens, I'm like, okay, we have two options: like piss our client off or
Yep.
figure it the fuck out. I'm like,
Yep.
those are the two options, and I can tell you which way I'm gonna go. Like,
Yep.
and when you're in the trades, you know what you need to do. Like, if you're a drywall guy and you do drywall for 30 years, you
Yeah.
don't need to call me and be like, "Hey, this drywall got wet. What do you think we should do?" Like, no, rip that shit out and fucking put new drywall up.
Yeah.
Like, use your head, you know? So,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Eddy, it's awesome to have this conversation. Again, I appreciate you so much for being here, sharing your story, and I'm really looking forward to further conversations with you.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. It's been
Awesome.
great.
Eddy, have a great day. Guys, thanks for
All
spending
right.
this time with us. Get shit done.
Thanks. Bye.